Okay, good.
All right, I think we're good to go. Hi, welcome. Welcome to the Gazette's Business Breakfast Series. I am Michael Chevy Castronova. I am the business editor and the editor of Iowa Ideas Magazine. If you're familiar with our series, they're usually in person. We've been doing them in the past year at New Boco in their cafe space. They've been very kindly provided by New Boco, our community sponsor for that and this event. As with you, the pandemic has mandated some changes to our usual operations. Like you, many of us have been working from home since March, and the derecho has made it even more complicated. So right now, in fact, I'm in a borrowed office at Color Web Printers at out on Bowling Street, just outside of town, and we're doing these online. Yay! So here we are. Today, we're going to talk about a situation kind of interesting and maybe specific to Iowa and some other Midwestern states about hiring and retention. We don't have mountains. We don't have oceans. We don't have those kinds of things that people generally say, oh, I want to go to Chicago, I want to go to Denver. Well, we're here in Iowa. And that makes hiring and retention even more interesting. So we're having our panel. We're going to talk about that. But I need to do some quick housekeeping things first. I mentioned New Boco, our community sponsor. You should also go to our Gazette site. We have a number of derecho resources listed there for businesses. And the Gazette is resuming its matching marketing grant program, which you can read about there, particularly after the storm. We know a lot of businesses and small businesses can use a little help. So Gazette.com. I need also to mention the Gazette's corridorcareers.com, which is the online platform for Eastern Iowa to help job seekers find good jobs and local jobs. And I also want to mention that there will be a virtual job fair. And we know a number of people have been put out of work because of the pandemic. And now this fun activity of not having electricity. So this is like the old days of TV, right? I'm reading this. Corridor Careers will have its virtual job fair 3 to 6 p.m. on Thursday, September 17. Thursday, September 17. You can find out more about that by going to corridorcareers.com. So do that. And now to our panel. I'm going to ask each of you, of our three panelists, to introduce yourselves. Tell me where you work, what your job title is, and where are you right now? Samantha, you're the first one on my screen. So where are you and who are you?
Thank you very much, Michael. I'm Samantha Rogers. I work at the Skywalk Group, and I'm the Senior Human Resources Manager. And we oversee a group of HR consultants who are either an extension of a team or who are the generalist or the director for a company that just isn't large enough to have their own 40-hour-a-week HR person on staff. So we get to work with many, many different companies, and we also do recruiting and we do professional development. Right now, I am at home, thank goodness. I have power and internet, and those didn't come at the same time. So I'm very thankful to have everything working right now. And I'm sitting in the air conditioning, and I know that not everyone is like that. So, but thanks for having me today. I'm excited to be here, Michael.
Thanks. Thank you, Samantha. Dave Swenson, where are you? Where are you, Dave?
Hello, I'm Swenson. I'm talking to you from my living room. I'm one of those fortunate employees that gets to work from home. I work at Iowa State University. I'm an economist there. I'm classified as a research scientist, but economist is good enough. I study regional economies, the dynamics of change. What are the consequences of change, especially for communities? I've been doing it for a long, long time, so I have a long-range perspective on what's been going on in and around the state, and excuse me, especially with communities. As I sit here talking to you, I have a half lab, half beagle laying on my foot. So I'm trying not to move too much so that people keep sleeping.
Thanks, Dave. Tom, tell us about yourself. Where are you?
Good morning, Michael. I am sitting at my kitchen table at home, surrounded by dogs as well, Dave, so I can relate there. I work for Iowa City Area Development Group. We're a local nonprofit that drives economic development activity primarily in the Johnson County area, but we also work collaboratively with our partners from the Economic Alliance and a joint venture called Iowa City or ICR, Iowa.org. And so I've spent a little bit of time with them, and happy to be here.
And I'm glad you're here, Tom. Okay, and the voice that you're going to hear occasionally, but you cannot see, is the Gazette's digital coach, Katie Brumbelow. And she's with us because, for a number of reasons, but one of them, one is to make sure I don't mess this up too much. But the other reason is, if you're watching live, which we started at 9 a.m. on Thursday, August 20, would like you to send in your questions and comments. Katie, you want to tell them how they can do that and say hello?
Sure. Hi. I'm Katie Brumbelow, as Michael said. On the page that on the Gazette.com, there is a live chat over to the right of the video. And if you click the little speech bubble icon and the gray bar at the top and follow the prompts there and put in your question, I will moderate those, and we'll ask them as they come in when we've got time in the chat.
Cool. Thanks, Katie. So let's go. So the first question is for each of you. So I'd like you to each in turn answer this question. And I admit it's open-ended. It's a big general question. What do you see as the biggest challenge, the greatest opportunity for hiring here in Eastern Iowa during the pandemic, during the derecho, post-pandemic? How do we do this? Zoom can't do everything. Samantha, what do you think?
Well, I'm going to give you an HR answer for that one because that's my field of expertise. One of the challenges that we're seeing that we have not seen before is the more widely used option of furloughing employees right now. So there are loyal employees out there, maybe not so loyal employees out there who are furloughed indefinitely right now. And so candidates that are candidates now because they used to be employees, they have to decide, am I going to show my loyalty to my employer and hopefully get recalled to work, or do I use this opportunity to look elsewhere for a better opportunity? So that's one of the challenges, you know, we haven't seen much of before. I don't think many people knew what furlough even before COVID-19 happened. So that's one of the challenges, is that not only have people lost their positions, and so the candidate pool has changed, we also have people in limbo that don't really know how to move forward. So that's, I think, one of the unique challenges we've seen. And as far as opportunities, I think there are opportunities that are always out there, but now more so than ever, we can take a look at our entire recruiting process to say what's working and what's not working. In preparation for this panel, we had a few questions, you know, to warm ourselves up on the recruiting topic. And those questions and the answers that go with them have changed even just in this last week with the derecho storm. And one way that I think we can incorporate and use this as an opportunity is think about how many of us, even just chatting this morning, some of us have power, some of us don't. If we're recruiting and we're using the post and pray method of, I have a position, here's a job description, copy paste and pop it on, and let's wait and see what we get. That's not, you may find candidates, but it's not a proactive approach. So I think an opportunity based on the derecho storm and COVID is at what point do we need more boots on the ground? At what point do we need to be working with our local nonprofit groups or other organizations that have the demographic that we're interested in expanding to? Many people don't have internet right now. So how can we be sure that we are recruiting in a safe and equal manner? So those are some challenges and opportunities.
So let me ask you a clarification question. When you say furlough, that term's being used, it's like layoff. Layoff used to be, when I first started as a reporter, I covered labor unions. And layoff meant go home for a few weeks, a few months, and then we're going to call you back. And now we tend to use layoff because it sounds nicer than fired. When you say furlough, that's not, people should understand, that's not a legal binding agreement. If you're furloughed, that doesn't necessarily mean you're coming back. Is that right?
So it really depends on what the employer does. These words have been kind of used interchangeably lately. It's
Yes.
all about the paperwork and what your employer's plan is. So furlough doesn't necessarily mean you're coming back unless they say you will come back in 90 days, 160 days, whatever that looks like. Same with a layoff. Layoffs tend to be more definite now. So we're laying you off, welcome to apply later situation. But yeah, it's led to a lot of confusion.
Okay. Tom, what are you seeing? What do you think about opportunities and challenges?
Well, we've been handed our fair share of challenges, that's for certain. I do tend to believe that in those challenges lie a lot of opportunity. I think that if we do take advantage of this, as Samantha suggested, there are opportunities for us to maybe revisit some of our practices and processes and that we've had and have gotten us here. I think in times of high growth and success, we're moving so fast and so quickly, it's really hard to slow down and maybe reevaluate certain aspects of our work and explore ways that maybe we can do things a little bit differently. And so from an opportunity perspective, obviously there were a number of folks that were impacted with COVID and it's prolonged through this derecho and other things. A number of folks with tremendous skills have been put back out into the job market. Obviously, the unemployment benefit was a factor that I think may or may not have limited people's desire to immediately jump back into the workforce. I think there's speculation both ways there on what that really did or didn't do. But I think ultimately we had a segment, predominantly the hospitality segment. So a lot of our bars and restaurants, our hotel sector that really took a significant hit. And so I work with interstate commerce companies. That's our primary area of focus. And so that's not typically necessarily a candidate pool that maybe they would have gone to first, but that seems to be the largest candidate pool of available workforce right now. So to Samantha's point about this idea of how do we reevaluate our processes in a way that we can start to evaluate candidates, even put job postings out there that are aligned with the skill sets that we're looking for, not necessarily the pedigree or the background. You know, only about a third of our residents have a college degree. And so when we have a number of the postings, I'd argue probably 60 to 80% of the postings that get put out there request a college degree or a preferred or some aspect. And so I see an opportunity, and we partnered and have been working with an organization for the last year or so called Skillful. And Skillful has been setting up shop in states like Colorado, Indiana. They're funded by the Markle Foundation, and they promote a skills-based hiring practice. And it's something at the economic development side here at ICAD, our partners at ICR have been pushing heavily at our HR practitioners to really start to use this time to maybe look at these different ways to promote and attract talent, and then also onboard and grow them inside of organizations. So I see an opportunity there if we take advantage of it. To use this time to retool and reevaluate how we go out and seek candidates and hire them. And then also, I see it as an opportunity for us to maybe get a little bit better at it. And in a time where we do have a larger available candidate pool that just may not be from the traditional areas that we seek from. So that's the opportunity and the challenge that lie in front of us, in my opinion.
Okay, thanks, Tom. So Dave Swenson at Iowa State University, what's the big macro view? What do you think?
Yeah, when I look at it, I think about it in terms of industrial structure and the dynamics of growth over time. You folks out in the Iowa City, Cedar Rapids region, you have advantages that much of the rest of the state doesn't have. Ames has those advantages. Des Moines has those advantages. Most of the rest of the state doesn't have those advantages. And the advantage is straightforward. You're attractive to in-migration. You're attractive to population growth. More than 3/4 of the counties in Iowa are contracting right now. So when I think about that, I also think about, well, what are the dynamics of metropolitan areas and what are they asking for? Now, your Cedar Rapids area has extraordinary manufacturing strengths, but you also have extraordinary demands for very highly educated people. So we've done a lot of research, and Lisa Lethington and I at Iowa State University did a piece a few years ago where we looked at what's the net exchange of workers in Iowa. And what we found out, which is something that you would expect, number one, we educate the heck out of people. So if people say, well, there's something wrong with Iowa because we don't have enough college educated people. First of all, we educate our people at very, very high rates. We just can't keep them. And we can't keep them because the rest of the world simply outbids us for them. And our industrial mix doesn't want as many of them as the national average. So we're at a competitive disadvantage. What we want are more medium to lower skilled workers by virtue of the industrial structures that we have. Well, that's less of an issue when we get to our metropolitan areas. Again, especially in your region, there's a lot of demand for college educated people, but there's also a lot of demand for a wider range of skills because you have way more economic diversity in your region, and you're going to be needing people, but you're also going to be successfully offering jobs. Now, when we were pre-pandemic and unemployment rates were really low, everybody's demand for educational qualifications and many other things, they kind of went down because, you're going to have to take what you can get. Now we've got a huge supply of idle labor that may or may not get back to work. And this brings you to my next point. We don't quite know what the next economy is going to look like, both the within pandemic and post-pandemic economies. Is our manufacturing structure going to require as much labor, or is it going to have to reconsider the workplace environment such that it's taking into account health and safety issues that it never had to take into account before? Are we going to need or demand many fewer accommodations, hospitality, food and dining services, drinking services employees, because a lot of that's just not going to be engaged in over time? Are we going to have a surplus labor pool with sets of skills that it has nothing to do with the skills mismatch? They have sets of skills that are just simply no longer needed anymore. And what are we going to do about that? So we've got a lot of things as we work through this pandemic to find our way out of. And I'm going to go back to this. I tell it in every presentation I have, though. Metropolitan areas like yours have advantages that much of the rest of the state does not have.
Okay. All right. Well, that which brings up one of the points I was going to ask about. In previous panels, and not that long ago, we always talked about Iowa has all these jobs and not enough people to fill them. And how are we going to get them? We talk about, well, we need to look at hiring ex-felons, and we need to look at people who English is their second language, and we need to consider all these things to hire. I guess my question is, the short question is that still true with the pandemic and with the economic issues we've had and everything else? What are we hiring now? What do we need now? And you've already answered some of that, Dave, by saying, we don't know. I mean, do we know? I mean, Samantha, what are you looking for? What are you telling people?
Well, so I am an Iowa transplant myself. I come from Indiana and lived in Indianapolis for 5 years before moving here. So I love, Dave, you're comparing Cedar Rapids to Ames or other rural areas in Iowa. I remember when I moved to Cedar Rapids from Indianapolis, and people were referring to this as the big city. I moved from Vinton to the big city of Cedar Rapids. And so love to hear that, because it really provides that perspective. Indianapolis was so large. We had the Pacers, the Colts. It was just a very different transition here. But I can say on the employer side, what we're doing to attract people, it depends on the industry. We work with so many, but those technology-based industries, the healthcare-based industries, when we're looking for a candidate pool of highly skilled, highly educated workers, it's a relocation package. And lots of times we need to be able to compete with, those mountains, those big cities. And I think Iowa strong, the culture that we have here is what kept us here. A job with a nice, it wasn't a relocation package, but it was an opportunity to move out here is what brought us here. It was the culture that kept us here. And in addition to having those just opportunities to grow from within, the relocation assistance, and then also the cost of living is another big thing to harp about. And Iowans love their football, I've come to learn about. So if you can get someone to go tailgating or join a game with you, that might help as well.
Tom, what do you think?
Yeah, no, it's interesting. Both Dave and Samantha hit on some pretty good points. I see these challenges. We in Iowa City, in particular, obviously with the university, so we're more similar to Ames and Dave's world. We've got a pretty strong entrepreneurial segment, and I know New Boco is doing great work in that space as well, and building out a lot of resources, and we try and work and partner with them. I think that there are challenges as it relates to that opportunity and the number of opportunities. To Samantha's point, a number of our growing med tech or ed tech companies continue to have to hire from outside of the region to find that requisite skill set. We don't have the density of skill sets in those spaces to really foster continued growth or rapid growth for some of these organizations. And so it becomes a challenge for us to keep them here. And in large, as they continue to mature and grow, a number of times you'll find them hiring executive level individuals from outside the area in larger markets. And so we have to think about, who it is that we're trying to attract. And I do see an opportunity with COVID now where people can work from anywhere. So maybe it's less about attracting someone here to work for a local company and more about selling the opportunity to relocate out of an area that you're no longer tethered to for work, and highlighting the quality of life and a number of the attributes that Samantha had shared that for the right individual at the time of their life is very attractive to them. I still don't know that this idea of or notion that we're going to be able to keep all of our college graduates, or even that we should even try, really is based on a good use of our time and resources. I don't want to call it a fool's errand, but I think decades of us banging that drum and having less than attractive results in that area probably demonstrate that maybe we're looking at it a little bit through the wrong lens. And so understanding what it is that we do have and that can be attractive to certain people at certain areas, times of their life. Dave touched on it earlier a little bit. I also think we have a bit of it, whether it's part of it, the real narrative or the perceived narrative, we have a mixed issue with our opportunities. We're known as an ag and a manufacturing state, largely.
Yes.
And to people outside of our borders, that's what they think of when they think of Iowa. And quite frankly, I don't know any 20-somethings, especially those that go out and pursue a college degree, that are dying to get into ag and or manufacturing careers. They want to be in the next .com, the next Google, the next Amazon. That's the world that they see themselves in, or solving that next big problem, a Facebook. And so to the extent that we can create these dynamic industries through entrepreneurial opportunities, or the narrative that they exist here, be it in ed tech, med tech, I know in the Ames market, they're doing ag tech. How do we do things that are going to be more attractive to this younger population and where they can see a fit in these opportunities, and then create enough density of those opportunities that they can come here? Kids right now, they get a degree and they graduate and they're heading to Colorado, probably for a variety of reasons, but they're heading there many times without a job. But they know that they're going to be able to find something that's going to fit for them and to be a good place to start. I don't know if we'll ever be that place necessarily, but I think we have an opportunity to continue to create those segments that I've just talked about and maybe change our narrative a bit. But generally speaking, the opportunity now with the untethered workforce may be targeting that next phase of individuals' life and leveraging the quality of life and raising families and all of these things that we have been strong at for a long time.
So in addition to saying, if you love them, let them go, you're also saying, if I understand correctly, we need to develop more industries, more entrepreneurs. And do we have if that's right, do we have things in place to help those entrepreneurs here or come here to develop these new technologies?
I think we're getting better at it, but I think we have a long way to go. I think, as we talked about earlier, the Nubos of the world, the JPECs that are throughout the state inside of our university systems. Ames has done a great job in I think, developing their entrepreneurial groups. I think the University of Iowa has been strong in that for several years. I think we have opportunities. I think funding has always been something that has been a challenge, as well as that the density of the expertise in these specific industries and domains. And so leveraging technology, the ability to find these folks, maybe remotely, and engage them in this work where maybe they're not on the ground as an opportunity. I still think we are building out our ecosystem, and there are components that we need to continue to shore up. But there are people that are committed to it, and I feel optimistic that we're headed in the right direction, but we have a ways to go.
Dave, are we heading in the right direction?
Well, yeah, inevitably we are, and the degree to which we continue to urbanize in the state, which is somewhat anathema to some people, because when I say things like, well, rural areas are declining, and people will say, well, that's a bad thing. Well, there's an economist out there like me who might say, well, yes, but then that's a good thing because we're reallocating labor to places where it's better compensated, it's more efficiently utilized. I hate to use words like that when I talk about people. The young people we have here in Iowa, they don't leave because they don't love us. They leave because we can't use them. And because we can't use them, they go someplace else. Over time, our economy is diversifying. Most of that diversification is occurring in urban areas. And the degree to which it diversifies away from overdependence, and I don't mean that pejoratively, overdependence on agriculture or manufacturing, but has a mix of demands for skills, for business services, for healthcare services, for education services, for information and technical services. As that evolves over time, we'll retain more of that population. We did basic analysis of information off of the Bureau of Labor Statistics projections for occupations by industry over a 10-year cycle. And through the middle of this next decade, the 2020s, those projections said we're going to want in Iowa twice as many college-educated people as we are middle-educated people, post-high school, some certificates, some college, or two-year degree. Well, we have a lot of people saying, "Oh, we need more people with two-year degree," but the evolution of our economy is suggesting, no, we're going to need twice as many college graduates. Well, we're going to get those college graduates if we're able to be competitive. Because many of us don't want to. I'm not in the job market anymore. I ask students, and I say every year, how many of you think you're going to be working in Iowa upon graduation? And the average out of a group of 20 to 30 is just 2 or 3. Their mindset is elsewhere. I don't know what we do to change that, but I do know this: if you recruit at a college with a bona fide opportunity for a college grad, they're going to pay attention to it. And so over time, we're going to retain more of our skilled talent, and we're going to be more successful at it, just simply because of inertia. The act of moving oftentimes can be interfered with, but with a decent offer from home. You're not going to maybe move back to Pocahontas County, but you might not be averse to living in Polk County.
So Dave, I'm curious, what does your research and findings say about the trades and how there's a deficit in skilled trades?
Yeah, the research says that there is skilled trades. We talk about middle skills, and most people define middle skills as high school, post-high school with some on-the-job experience. Now, when we move across and we get to skilled trades, we have a subset of skilled trades that are high demand, but the people capable of doing those jobs, the people capable of incorporating mathematics into their decision-making and their work processes, the people that are able to engage in complex problem solving on the fly, they're also demanded by a wider range of industries now than they were 20 years ago. Those same types of thinking and skills and problem solving skills are being demanded by the healthcare industry, by the information technology demands that we see in our metropolitan areas, not just looking for somebody who can run a computer operated machine outfit for a manufacturing firm. So we have a way bigger demand for that kind of talent than we used to have. And that, I think that demand is evolving with the supply. Eventually that supply is filling it. Now, I do know that much of that supply, especially on the technology side, has been filled by immigrants, very successfully recruiting immigrants of one form or another who can do those kinds of jobs. I'm going to go back to the community colleges. I think we rank 5th in the United States in community college completions. We rank 2nd in the United States of a freshman in high school making it all the way through 4 years of college. We're really good at educating ourselves. What we may not be so good at is attracting skilled talent to compensate for some of our deficits.
So Samantha, following from that, as you're our HR person here, how do you get people to come here? I mean, what do you advise other people in your profession with saying, through this pandemic, we have corn, and now we don't have any lights. What are you telling people?
What's funny is
We don't even
Indiana
have
has corn
cable.
too. So I think it all goes back to branding and marketing. And so the topic of today's discussion is not just recruiting, but also retention. So that relocation assistance program, that culture that you have at your organization, the benefit package that you've put together, they're huge. And playing off of what Thomas has, he mentioned the Skillful app, he mentioned making sure that we're not necessarily requiring those degrees if we don't need them. Do you really need a degree to be a receptionist? Do you need a degree to use the phone systems and direct clients and patients where they need to go? When it comes to the culture you're building and making sure that you're bringing in the right candidate, if you need to look at the workforce and the population that you're interested in hiring. So not just the education level, the skill level, the competency level, but also, are we looking to diversify? Do we want to tap into a population we haven't worked with before? So when we look at those things, if we are interested in having immigrants, let's say, if we want to recruit externally and think about the populations that other countries can offer, maybe a part of your benefit package needs to be not just 2 weeks of paid time off a year. Maybe you can group larger periods of time, paid or unpaid, in your benefit package to accommodate that population. So if people want to go back to, let's say, Jordan for a summer, maybe that is a benefit package that we can offer. The Skywalk Group puts on the coolest places to work survey. And with those, I remember one of the winners of last year, I think they have a great culture compared to everyone else and this great benefit package. But when they ask the employees, what do you want? What can we do to diversify? They're asking for maternity leave, paternity leave, and a hammock in the break room.
A hammock in the break room?
Yes, I mean, you never know what these employees would like, but that's the thing, is how much does it cost to put a hammock in the break room? How much does it cost to have a video game that they can play? Is it okay if people work from home on Friday afternoons or Friday mornings? Thinking about not just guessing, but also asking, what does your population want? And then what's the cost of actually giving it to them? Then that's the first step. The second step is actually advertising and communicating that out. So I have clients who offer these great benefits and they're little quirks that go with their personality and their culture. But when you're interviewing someone, when you're posting these things online, scream it from a mountaintop that you are cool and that you have these benefits. And this is what can really set us apart, is meeting people where they're at, no matter whether they're millennials or Gen Z or Gen X. We can do a little bit for everyone. So.
Okay. All right. So Katie, do we have any questions that have come in that you want to pitch here?
Sure. Yeah. Well, and Samantha touched on it a little bit. One of the questions we had from Kristen Rolfson Marion, who asked, during the pandemic, what are companies doing to keep employees engaged beyond the work? Specifically, like if you had a really great work culture when you were in the office and now that's gone, what can you do? I mean, I think also when you're thinking about recruiting, how do you tell somebody we've got a really great work culture, but you're working from your home office? What can be done?
That's been really tough. So there's a company that I've been recruiting for lately, and they're asking about the culture. And I'd like to answer a then and maybe again, and then what are we doing now? So I think it's in two different stages. So in one case, I could say, well, yes, the owner of this company really appreciates Star Wars movies. So for our team outing that quarter, they rented out the entire movie theater when the Han Solo movie came out, and everyone in their families got to go and eat popcorn. And that was one of the indicative pieces of culture when we could be together. Now, what are we doing as we're working remotely, as we are trying to participate in team meetings? One of the most creative ways I think people have done their culture in their meetings, I think we've all heard about the happy hours, right? So if you're happy hour pro, or if you're not happy hour, those virtual drinks with the team is an option. But I've seen someone do scavenger hunts, which was really fun. They had a team come in, they separated them into groups via Zoom, and they had a list of tasks, and whoever could go run around their house or office and find that stapler, find a pillow, find a pet, whatever that is. It was a great way to get people out of their seats and also communicating and laughing together. People have been doing Mad Libs together. I think it's about how creative you can get. And again, back to my first point on this is, as employers, don't just assume this is going to be fun. Ask your employees what they think would be fun and see if we can accommodate.
Okay. So Samantha, while you have the floor, let me ask you about this, because we wanted to touch on this. We talked a lot before March 8th, which I remember was because that was the first case of the coronavirus in Iowa, and it's also my birthday. So I will always remember that. But we used to talk a lot about diversity in hiring and promoting diversity in hiring. The question is not what I mean. I'm going to ask you, yes, it's still important. How important is that still? I mean, do we still need to do that? And does that bring in other people? And then I'm going to come to you, Tom, with that same question.
Yeah, I can't wait to hear what Thomas has to say, because he is with ICR here. But let's see. Is it more important, and is it still important? You can ask that with or without the pandemic, with or without the derecho storm, and the answer will always be yes, it is still important, and yes, it is more important than it was yesterday.
Diversifying. Why? Why is it important? Tell us why it's important, Samantha.
So statistically speaking,
Yes.
when you have different upbringings, different perspectives, different ranges of education, you will have different ways of solving the same problem. If you have a group of like-minded people who are all from, let's say, Cedar Rapids, who all went to co-college, who were in the same sorority, who then all decided to work in, let's say, the human resources group. When you have similar experiences like that, and you're presented with a problem, they've all been taught the same way to deal with it. And there may be some diversity in there, because it's not simply just gender and race. There are all sorts of ways to be diverse. Your religious background, your upbringing, your family unit, there's so much. But when you are working with people that are not exactly the same mindset, that have different experiences, it diversifies the location. You're thinking outside the box. You are improving the decisions that your organization is making. It's just so impactful, and it's more inclusive, and it's more respectful. And I could just keep going on and on and on, but Thomas, can I cue you in?
What she said. You're exactly right, Samantha, for all of those reasons. And Michael, I think it's been important. It continues to be important. And I'll revisit earlier kind of the framing of this skillful tool. And there are others out there. I'm not saying that's the only one, but I think inherent to our challenges that lie in that space are the processes we use in which we hire people now. And typically our traditional kind of mainstay hiring process, we talk a lot about fit. We talk a lot about, you ultimately end up hiring your likeness in many ways. And that does not lend itself very well to diversity. And so until we really take a hard look at how we go about doing things and making those sacrifices to eliminate the bias, our current hiring processes are riddled with bias, and it doesn't mean it's intentional. It's largely unintentional. It's where we've adapted and grown to. It's how we're comfortable. And and it produces the results that we have. And we are woefully challenged in this space, and many organizations are. And until you take a real hard look at how you go about doing it, and changing what that looks like, I don't know that you can have all the best intentions you want, but if we use the same methodologies that we've continued to use, we are going to get the same results despite our intention. And so, to Samantha's point, to Dave earlier, it's time to rethink how we do it if we really want a different outcome. And if you think of any complex adaptive system on Earth, biodiversity is what is a direct indicator of health. And the higher the biodiversity in any of those aspects, the greater the health of that system. It's the same way in our communities. It's the same way in our workplaces. Cognitive diversity, there's plenty of research, AEM cubed, even inside of your own teams. Diversity is going to create tremendous value and tremendous health in all aspects. We as a society have tended to gravitate and move more monoclastic in a lot of different things, and we're paying the price in a lot of different areas, not only just the workplace. So it's an opportunity that if it's the only thing we get right coming out of derecho or in COVID, is a rethinking of how we do things to better align with creating those types of outcomes, I think we'll be in a large leap in the right direction.
Okay, we've got about actually only 4 minutes left here. Katie, do we have any other questions? I don't want to leave people out who have sent something in. Or,
Right.
Yeah, Katie, do we have another one?
Let's see what we've got. I guess what about the future of the physical workspace? So we've got a lot of buildings are being, a lot of places are getting rid of their actual brick and mortar real estate to go virtual or going smaller. What does the Iowa's landscape look like in the future when it comes to office space, office buildings where people are working all together in the same space?
Oh, I like that because we've seen the story, right, that says New York City is dead, and they're talking about commercial real estate. And Dave, maybe I'm wrong. You're the economist, but I'm pretty sure a lot of what I've read in the 3 economics classes I took in college, the business model suggests that working from home after time is not good for productivity. Or is that just old thinking and it depends on what you do?
Well, it's evolving, but earlier studies basically said that there were only a subset of workers who either were successful working from home or happy working from home, that there are interactions that occur within the workforce, plus your opportunities for advancement, your opportunities for the kinds of interactions that lead to employment security, that much of that is enhanced by face-to-face interaction. What we're going to look like in the future, you know what, I try not to project from my own experiences, and I try not to project from a short-term event to say that this is the new normal 5 months into the pandemic. I think is completely wrong. What we'll have to see is how do we get through this pandemic, then how will businesses adapt? Like I said before, will manufacturing have to redesign the way that it interacts with machineries and people? There are all kinds of things that we're going to have to figure out, but where we are right now is certainly not where we're going to be in 24 months.
Too soon to tell.
Too damn soon. Right.
Okay. Samantha, what are you seeing? What are you hearing among HR people about that? Are we going to be working from home forever?
Well, I think there are 2 factors when it comes to working from home. One, it's the fact that we're in the middle of a pandemic where we are socially distancing. And 2 is the fact that we have this Gen Z population coming into the workforce. So we have 2 big things driving in the direction of more flexibility and at least partially being able to work from home. So I think the pressures of recruiting that team, we've already seen employers, thank goodness, if we want to recruit this new talent, we need to start considering this. I do know that just like fashion that repeats itself, I'm not very good at that, but office space does too. So we were seeing cubicles, and then we were saying no open floor plan, and now we're seeing cubicles. tables and dividers again. So we will see things like that over and over again. And I think flexibility is just going to be the key moving forward. I agree with Dave that there are some who can be very productive working from home and happy, and there are some that cannot. So it depends on the individual, and maybe assessing performance and expectations regularly can help that be successful.
Tom, quickly, what are you seeing at ICAD? What are you hearing about that?
Yeah, I echo both of their sentiment on the topic. I think it's fairly fluid and dynamic. I do think short term, we're obviously going to see a lower demand on the traditional office space as we sort through all of this. It could give employers an opportunity to potentially expanding into larger footprints, given kind of what the nature of work looks like for the next 12 to 18 months. But I also, just speaking personally, having sat at my kitchen table for several months now, we're social creatures as well. And there is a longing and a desire to return to and create that separation of church and state a little bit from the home and the workplace. And so I think that, and there's Zoom fatigue. I think what was interesting and novel for about 6 to 8 weeks is now grinds on people. If we're being honest, I think 75 minutes on a Zoom call for most people is pretty taxing. And when you start stacking those up throughout a day, that gets to be challenging too. So even though technology provides remarkable capabilities to stay connected, I think that we are still social creatures. And so some form or semblance of in-person gathering and traditional work environment, I think, will always have a desire or a need to exist. But both Dave and Samantha said, I think near term that looks very differently, and time will tell what it looks like long term.
Okay, and so that we're not grinding down on people with our Zoom meeting. We are at 46 minutes. Good point. So I want to thank our panel for being here today and calling in. Samantha, Dave, Tom, thank you. Great stuff. I want to thank NewBoCo for continuing to be our community partner, and you can see more about them at newboco.org. And I have Katie remind me, Iowa Ideas Conference, our Iowa Ideas Conference this year, our 4th year. We always did it at the DoubleTree. This year we will be doing it all online on the 15th and 16th of October. We'll have lots of panels, lots of speakers, and guess what? This year it's free. Some keynotes. It'll be great. Thank you everybody for watching. This will be up on our Gazette site for a while, so you could watch it again if you like, and we'll have more when we get to our next panel. Thank you, Samantha. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Dave. And I think we're done. Thanks, Katie. Bye.
Thank you, Michael. Thanks,
Thank
Katie.
you very much. Have a good day.
Thanks, guys.
And I think we're done.